Have you ever seen anyone argue against something so hard that they inadvertently wind up supporting the very thing that they're arguing against? Well, you're going to see some of that in this episode.
Should I stay or should I go now? If I go, there will be trouble. And if I stay, it will be double. So come on and let me know.
If you ask a gun owner why it is that he owns a gun, chances are he'll tell you it's for defensive purposes, whether it be for personal protection, protection of his home, or for the defense of his business. Poll after poll underscores the very fact that most Americans recognize the defensive value of guns. Quite naturally, those in the gun control lobby will try to say something like, well, defensive gun uses are actually quite rare. The more misinformed ones will actually say something along the lines of that they don't really happen at all in the interest of trying to downplay the legitimacy of gun ownership. And all the while, they will bombard you with all these stories about gun-related crime, one after the other, all day long, all week long, sometimes even recycling stories in order to make it look like they're more than are actually happening. And in the process, inadvertently supporting the case for owning guns for defensive purposes. But in pushing their narrative, they leave out some very critical details, and it tends to wreck a few of their talking points. And here's what's missing. For example, some people will look at the Violence Policy Center's rather unimpressive numbers regarding a defensive gun use and say, oh my, look at that! A mere 200 versus 30,000 gun deaths. Guns are useless as defensive tools. Except, note for a second right here that even these unimpressive numbers have just caused Shannon Watt's talking point about defensive gun uses not happening to go down in flames. Plus, the very fact that she has armed bodyguards herself kind of tells me that she isn't really convinced about her own talking point. But getting back to the VPC, these small numbers are dependent upon a very narrow interpretation of what a defensive gun use might be. In this case, a justifiable homicide. But does every defensive gun use wind up with a body on the floor? Well, not according to the most widely read study on the subject, which was done by Gary Kleck and Mark Gertz in the 1990s. No, according to their findings, they discovered that the majority of defensive gun uses don't even involve a shot fired. A lot of times, just presenting the gun was sufficient. The thing of it is, even the VPC recognizes this, except they're very elusive about it on their page dedicated to guns used in self-defense. Their pitch would go something like this. Bang! Look at that! Guns are rarely used in self-defense. Look at all that verbiage. Look at the infographic. Now go spread the word about the rarity of guns used in self-defense. Go on. Yeah, go on. Don't worry about this little bit right here about self-protective behaviors. It's really just a small percentage. Just continue on. It's nothing to worry about. It's really nothing. But if you're really insistent on finding out what these numbers mean, scroll up a little bit and click on this publication that we have buried behind the front page. And what do you find out? Bang! Again, guns used in self-defense are rare. Only 224 justifiable homicides. So spread that news. But you're still insistent on getting those numbers for self-protective behaviors, but and we'll give them to you. Just you have to scroll through halfway through the study, and there you have it. 175,000 for violent crime, and an additional 109,000 for property crime. That's probably grand total of about 284,700, But that's still so much smaller than what Kleck and Gertz say about, 3 million, 2.5 million. No number could be that big. It's ridiculous, really. But we must remind you that gun violence is such a devastating part of American culture right here, with 36,000 deaths by guns. Just never mind that the 700 plus, let's say about 600 for 3 years worth of justifiable homicides comes out to about a little over 285,000, which translates into about 95,000 self-protective behaviors per year, which is a lot bigger than 36,000. But never mind that. 36,000 is much more important. And of course, there was that study conducted by the Obama administration that discovered that the defensive use of guns was at least as common as the criminal use of guns. And judging from what I have gleaned from the FBI crime reports, the numbers given by that same report tend to overshadow the criminal uses reported by the FBI. Smells like burnt narrative. Sometimes we gun rights advocates have no greater ally than those who try so hard to prove that the right that we cherish is so wrong. Because gun ownership in this country is a net plus, and if you dig into the facts, you find that out, no matter how hard you try to spin it.